In this monologue, I'm going to share with you why ambiguity is the antithesis. It's the enemy of execution. And without specificity, your business, heck, even your personal life, will suffer and be suboptimal. Before we get to that, remember, if you need help generating more leads for your brick and mortar health or wellness or fitness business, and then you need help getting those leads through the front door to schedule their first appointment and show up so that you can sell them a membership and help them change their lives, check out ThriveMore.ai. That's ThriveMore.ai. We can partner with you and make your life a whole lot easier. You know, Mark Twain is quoted as saying, "The secret to getting ahead is getting started." And I'll tell you right now, and you know this, that if we don't make change, if nothing changes, then nothing changes. So we have to get started. And that's where so many people, so many entrepreneurs, so many people in their own life, their fitness, their health, their wellness, they get stuck at the part of getting started. They plan and they think about it, and they plan and they think about it. And of course, you want to plan, you want to research, you want to have a plan, but you want to start that plan. But where I've found more businesses go off track, and where I've seen in my experience, more people's health journeys go awry, and more people's relationships, and really just their plan for their life goes off track because of one key aspect. And that is that ambiguity is the enemy of execution. So many of us say, I'm going to get in shape. So many of us say, I'm going to improve my marriage. Or this is the year I turn my business around and have a stellar year. None of those three are going to happen. None of those three things are going to happen because there's too much ambiguity built into those proclamations. And you've read SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And we know this. We learn this in school. We learn this with any business book that we read. But for some reason, too many of us fail to apply that to our own goals. Now, I will share with you, I believe in the power of writing your goals down every single day. Every single day. I have a separate journal and I write my goals down. The optimal would be to write them down in the morning when you wake up and write them down in the evening before you go to bed, because then your mind's thinking about achieving those goals, and then during the day you're thinking about it. I don't always do that, and I'm going to admit that I at least focus on writing them down one time a day. Now, that's not typing them. That is a pen to a paper, writing them down in a journal, and I write them in present or future tense, meaning I am a person who does XYZ. I am a person who exercises 5 times per week. I am a person who strives to achieve whatever. I will make this amount of money. I will build a business to this level by, X date in the future. And so I would challenge you, the listener, to write your goals down one time per day. And then literally you just write the same thing. I have 10 goals. I made a nice round number of 10, and they're fitness, they're wealth, and they're relationship based. They're separate, but that's what I cover. And the reason that you want to write the same goal down every single time, unless something radically changes in your life, is because it will start to become part of your thinking, your everyday thinking. And what was once abstract is now very concrete. However, I am going to get fit in, this year, 2025, 2026, whatever it may be. I am going to earn, $500,000, whatever it may be. That's not going to happen, because you must say, I am going to earn X amount of dollars by this specific date, period. And then you write that again and again and again and again. But the ambiguity comes in. I believe my experiences with people, they leave themselves an out. Sometimes people don't mean to be ambiguous. They just happen to write it that way and aren't really thinking. But I want you, the listener, to be conscious of what you're writing down with your goals and strip out all of the ambiguity. So in other words, if you have 25 pounds that you want to lose, I'm making this up, but let's say you weigh 215 pounds and you want to get down to 190 pounds. Your goal should be, I will be 190 pounds by December 31st, X date. Then your next goal has to support, or your next goal would have to support that first goal. I am a person who exercises 5 times per week, every week, period. Then your next goal, I am a person who eats clean 85% of the time, meaning I only eat 2 meals of processed foods per week. That is specificity, and that will get you the results that you're looking for versus I eat clean. Okay, well, what does that mean? How often? Because nobody's perfect. So give yourself a little bit of leeway there so that you don't miss your goals. You want to achieve them. They need to be a stretch goal, but they need to be achievable. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, right? And so when you write your goals in that aspect, you're taking out the ambiguity. And the ambiguity is where we start to misfire and go off the path. Let me give you a great business example of this. You're in a meeting, you're leading a meeting, or you're part of the meeting, and the person who is running the meeting says, okay, great. Then we all need to come up with one idea to help solve this problem that we've talked about today so that we don't have this conversation again. Well, that's not going to get done. But instead, if we say we take out the ambiguity, because ambiguity is the enemy of execution. If we take out the ambiguity and say, okay, John, you will come up with one solution that will address this part of the problem, and you will do that, and you'll bring 3 alternatives, and then your best proposal for one of those alternatives by 2 weeks from now on Tuesday, January 15th, whatever the date happens to be. Do you agree with that, John? Is that a fair ask? You can achieve that? Fantastic. Then let's mark that down in the meeting notes. And you are in charge of bringing 3 solutions and your best recommendation of those 3 to solve this other part of this issue we've been talking about, this specific granular part, and your budget to do so cannot exceed $5,000. And we need to have that option and the budget of how the money will be spent no later than 3 weeks from today, which is X date of 3 weeks from now. And is that fair? And do you need any resources to achieve that? Is there anything else you need from this team to achieve that? So 3 weeks from today, you are going to present 3 options with 1 preferred and then a budget to run that preferred and how that's going to help us win and never talk about this problem again. No? Cool. Frank. And then you just go around the room and you're assigning versus these big, let's do this or let's do that. And everyone says, sure, but no one takes responsibility for it. And no one is prescribed the specific executable point or tactic or action task that they must do by the next time that you meet. Let's just take this to relationships. How is ambiguity hurting your relationship with your significant other, maybe with your children, with your parents, with your friends? Well, let's talk about my kids are grown now, and I love that because it's they're responsible, they're on their own, and I'm still incredibly proud of them and get to see them all the time. But I don't have to actively manage them every single day, like when maybe they're a teenager in the house. And when you say, "Hey, son, you need to clean your room, son," and he says, "Okay, Dad," and then you leave, well, don't expect him to clean his room. Instead, hey, son, you'd agreed in the past to keep your room clean, at least, nothing on the floor, and have, and make your bed in the morning before you go to school. We had agreed to that previously. So is it fair to ask that by tonight, when I come back to say goodnight, your room will be clean, your bed at least straightened because you will be sleeping in it tonight, and everything is off the floor and folded, and these dishes that are up here are back down in the sink, and you put them in the dishwasher. Is that fair to ask that all of that is done by the time I come back to say goodnight at 9 p.m. tonight? Yeah, Dad. Great. I'll see you at 9, and I can't wait to see your sparkling room. I love you. Appreciate you. That's it. But usually what I would say is, you need to clean your room. Okay, I will. Okay. By when and what are the standards? I've done a previous, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to the previous episode I did around standards and my visit to First Form, the supplement company in St. Louis, Missouri, at their headquarters. I spent 3 days at their headquarters, and their standard for how you leave a sink after you wash your hands in the restroom, their standard for pushing in your chair when you stand up from a meeting, their standard for how your desk should look and be organized is so spelled out and so detailed, there is zero ambiguity, zero. And thus, they have conformance with all of these standards, and people feel proud of these standards. Well, those same type of standards is just another way. It's just another way of stripping out the ambiguity, so that, in essence, you don't have any ambiguity. There's no guessing. What does great look like? There's no guessing. Well, when do I have to have this done? There's no guessing on how do I make sure I do a good job so that I get the rewards that I deserve and that we mutually move this relationship forward, be it work, personal, your own relationship with yourself and your health, whatever it may be. Usually when we fail, it's because one, we don't have a plan to get there, and two, the plan is so vague that no one could achieve the goal, at least the way you see it in your mind, because there's too much ambiguity. And so if you want to take your health, if you want to take your business, you want to take your finances to the next level, to the highest level, to the optimal level, of course, have a plan, have those standards, but really start working on stripping the ambiguity out of your plan. And that's why I like writing my goals down every single day, because it gets real clear. And I've had to revise them, full disclosure. I've had to revise them as I've done this for years now. I've had to revise them because I'd had goals that were ambiguous, or I wrote goals in the past tense kind of, and that didn't make any sense. I need to write them in the present tense. Like I am, a gazillionaire. Well, I'm not yet, but if you write it that way, you start to exhibit that behavior. You start to exhibit, or I will achieve this by X date. Okay, now there's a sense of urgency to complete that. Without a sense of urgency, we'll get around to it. Yeah, we'll get around to it when there's time. But I got that thing with the kids tonight, or I got that thing at work tomorrow, or I would go to the gym, but I've got that deal that I promised my wife I would watch the last 2 episodes of that show we've been watching that are finally released. I want to make sure that I keep the relationship there alive. So I'll get to the gym tomorrow, because there's ambiguity. Versus, I am a person who works out 5 times per week, every week, period. Okay, I need to get a workout in. So even if it's 20 minutes, some sprints, in the street in front of my house, some push-ups, some tricep dips on a chair, whatever. Get that 20-minute workout in so you can check the box. You will feel so much better about yourself. Same thing for your personal finances. If you're overspending, if you're living above your means, my experience has been, if you set a very specific savings plan, investment plan, non-spending plan where you won't buy stuff that you're normally buying, and you stick to that because there's no ambiguity. I am a person who saves 15% of their post-tax income every single month in, month out. If I don't have enough money to go on a vacation because that money's been saved, we don't go on a vacation. If I don't have enough money to go buy the new car that I want because I don't have enough saved down for the down payment other than the money that I set aside for my investments and my savings and my future, or opportunities that may come along for business acquisition, whatever it may be, well, then we don't get to go buy that new car. And then when you stick to that and you say, I'm a person who saves 15% of their post-tax income month in and month out without exception, period, full stop, period, you will start to manifest that because there's no ambiguity. When you say, I'm a person who saves money and lives beneath my means, that's too vague. That's too vague. What is beneath your? I tell you, there's a large spectrum of I live beneath my means. That could mean I save 50% of my post-tax income. That could mean I spend everything, but I don't go in debt. Well, it's going to be hard to get ahead if you spend everything. Now, granted, the average consumer in America, the average consumer in the world is in debt. has debt on their house, has debt on their cars, has debt on their credit cards. They have negative net worth. The average person has negative net worth. Scary, but true. And you don't want to be one of those people. I don't want that for anybody. But the only way to get out of that trap, if that happens to be a particular area that you're stuck in, is to have a specific goal that you've written down, and you write down every single day, and there's no ambiguity in it. You've stripped the ambiguity out. You have just pulled it out. So anybody, a 6-year-old, could read your goal and go, wow, you save 15% of your post-tax income every single month, month after month, with no excuses. I'm 6 years old, but I understand what that means. I get it. I may not understand what post-tax means, but I understand about saving. I haven't quite learned what 15% is, but this goal makes sense to me, right? Make it so simple a 6-year-old could read it and understand it. Because if that's the case, you'll end up absolutely crushing your goals and you'll surpass them. What my experience has been, you'll surpass those goals as long as you're reviewing them and writing them down every single day. And then you just kind of review them monthly, go back and look what you've written and check your actions. You'll find that you're achieving those. And I made a social media post about this, but I wanted to put this into this episode. And that is, if a person who didn't know you, and I got this from a guest on the podcast, you'll be seeing that pretty soon, if not before this. If a stranger is watching you and watching your actions, what would that stranger think your goals are? What would they think you were trying to achieve? That hit me so much that I'm now saying it twice, once in a social media post and now on a podcast. And it's going to be featured by the guest in the podcast when that episode airs as well, because it's so powerful. It's so powerful. Think about what you do, how you spend your time, how much ambiguity is in your schedule and your plan for the day. And then if a stranger were to watch what you were doing, well, he or she watched me kind of fool around at work, not get a whole lot done, not stay up with my friends and my relationships, but instead I scrolled social media a lot. Then I went home. I was going to go to the gym. I had my bag packed, but I didn't. I was just worn out from the day. So I went home, poured myself a stiff drink, and then I sat down and watched 3 hours of television. And then I went to bed. Well, if a stranger observed that, which doesn't sound like a crazy day, right? That's not so abnormal for the average person. If a stranger observed that, what would they think your goals are? They would probably think, well, their goal is just to get through the day so that they can then get home and watch TV and have some alcohol, right? Because that's what I observed. So that must be their goals. And instead, if they watched it be handled differently, where you hustled at work, you were always asking for more responsibility and how you can help and contribute. If you ate a really clean lunch that wasn't with processed foods, and you didn't order out with Grubhub or whatever, and you brought your own lunch that was very healthy and had a high protein content. And then that evening you stopped off at the gym and you got a quick 35-minute workout in, but you got it in and you hustled through the workout and you kept moving. And then they saw you come home and, spend time with your family. And on the way home, they saw you make a phone call to a friend you hadn't talked to in a while to keep that relationship alive and well and to feed your soul and to feed their soul. And then when you got home, you spent time with the kids and the family, you had dinner as a family. And then you had a nice, sparkling flavored water as you watched 1 hour of a great show that you and your spouse or your significant other enjoy together. And then you did some journaling, and then you wrote your goals before you went to sleep, and then you went to bed. What would they think your goals are versus, the other scenario? Well, that's how you want to observe yourself. And by being very clear with your plan, by being very clear in your goals and taking out any ambiguity, just eliminating it. So it's, I am this person who does this every day, every week, every month, whatever it is. I will, if it's something in the future, I will achieve blank by doing blank, right? You just fill in those, you fill in, it's like a Mad Lib, you just fill in those lines. And then you write those every single day. You've now eliminated ambiguity from your life, and ambiguity is the absolute killer of effective execution. So eliminate the ambiguity, execute at the highest level, and live your most optimal life. I'm rooting for you. Till next time, set your intentions for the day and strive to thrive. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.